Hey, before I get into this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because this story is wild, personal, and trust me, you do not want to miss a second of it. What happened in my family might sound unbelievable, but it's all true and it completely changed how I see my brother, my parents, and even myself. I'm 35, and I have a younger brother named Todd. He's 29 now, but growing up he was the golden child, the center of attention, the kid who could do no wrong. Todd's birth was complicated. He had to stay a month in the ICU. My parents were terrified, and ever since then they've doted on him endlessly. Almost nothing was ever denied to him, even if it came at the expense of my sister Abby, who's 32, and me. And Todd, he thrived on it. He knew exactly how to make himself the center of attention, how to manipulate a room, and how to make people forget about anyone else's moment. Birthdays, holidays, graduations, family dinners, you name it. He found a way to insert himself and turn it all into a Todd show. Abby and I, as you can imagine, grew resentful. It wasn't just jealousy. It was frustration, confusion, and sometimes anger. We loved our brother, but it felt like the world revolved around him, and any happiness we had was always second. Even my parents couldn't see how much it hurt us because they were too busy protecting their miracle baby and making sure he had everything he ever wanted. As we grew older, the pattern never really changed. Todd met a woman named Lucy. She's 24, young and sweet, and she fell in love with him. Things moved fast, and before long she announced her pregnancy. But she didn't do it privately. She didn't sit us down and tell us. No, she announced it at my mom's baby shower for Abby. Abby was celebrating a huge emotional milestone in her life, surrounded by family and friends, and Todd found a way to overshadow it completely. He was smiling, Lucy was smiling, my parents were fussing over them, and all of a sudden it wasn't Abby's moment anymore. Todd had stolen it, and of course he basked in the attention. Now I try to be the reasonable one. I try to brush these things off, to let people have their moments, but Todd had a long history of doing this. And over the years it added up. So when my own wedding came around, I wanted something simple, something private, just Michelle and me. Michelle, my wife, she's 30 and loves big family events, so she insisted on having everyone there. Out of respect for her, I invited my family, including Todd, even though in the back of my mind, I knew exactly what could happen. During the preparations, my best man Jim noticed a jewelry store receipt slip out of Todd's pocket. That was our first clue. Todd had been planning something for weeks, and it wasn't just attending my wedding. He was planning to propose to Lucy there. I confronted him immediately, and I told him he would not be a groomsman. I also warned him that if he tried anything during the wedding, he would regret it. Todd cried to my parents, of course, and they were furious at me for being unfair. They insisted I was overreacting, that I was making assumptions, that Todd was just Todd. I brought up his long history of hijacking events, and for a moment, I thought they might understand. But they didn't really. They just managed to get Todd to agree not to propose in a way that would ruin the ceremony. Even so, I wasn't willing to let him have a role in the wedding. I knew that if I let him be a groomsman, it would only be a matter of time before he tried to make it all about him again. I warned him that if he acted out as a guest, I would make him regret it. Deep down, I hoped the warning alone would be enough. The day of the wedding arrived. Everything was perfect. Michelle looked beautiful. The venue was flawless. Guests were smiling, the music was playing, and I was trying to stay calm, enjoying every moment. And then it happened. Right in the middle of Michelle's father-daughter dance, Todd walked over to Lucy and proposed. Not quietly, not subtly. He did it in front of everyone, making it completely public. My jaw dropped, my blood boiled, and in that instant, every ounce of patience I had left disappeared. I had to act. I had to make sure that what he did didn't go unpunished. And here's where things got extreme. Jim and I had a plan ready. We hired a woman to pretend to be Todd's side piece. She cornered Todd and Lucy, claiming she was pregnant with his child. Todd denied it, of course, but we had prepared everything so meticulously that it looked convincing. I even gave her his phone number and manipulated his phone slightly to make it look worse. Lucy saw it and she threw the ring back at him in tears, leaving the venue. Todd's face when he realized what had happened. Something I'll never forget. He knew immediately that I was behind it. I didn't respond to a single call or text from him or my parents until after the honeymoon. Michelle, by the way, knew the entire plan and gave me the green light, and honestly, I felt satisfied. He had ruined my moment, and I had finally taken control of the situation. The fallout was intense. Lucy threw Todd's things out and denied access to their child. Todd is furious, demanding that I clear his name. I sent him a text saying I had no idea what he was talking about, along with a screenshot of the wedding bill, and asked for reimbursement for half of the costs. Abby thinks I went too far. Some of my extended family thinks I went too far. But in my mind, Todd had pushed me to a breaking point. I don't know how it's going to end. Todd and I haven't spoken in depth since. My parents are in limbo, trying to navigate who's right and who's wrong. And me, I'm just sitting here reflecting on everything, knowing that what I did was extreme, but also kind of satisfying. I can't say I regret it entirely. Todd deserved consequences for what he did, even if it meant going to lengths most people would never consider. After the dust settled, the house felt emptier, quieter, but not in a peaceful way. It was tense, awkward, like everyone was waiting for the other shoe to drop. My parents couldn't look me in the eye without a mix of anger and disbelief. And honestly, I couldn't blame them entirely. I had crossed a line, but at the same time, I couldn't stop thinking about that moment during the dance when Todd had ruined everything. My day, my wife's moment with her father, all of it, hijacked. Abby was furious. She didn't hold back her opinions either. She told me I went too far, that this wasn't the way to handle family problems, that revenge like this would scar all of us forever. And she wasn't wrong. I understood that. But sitting there and replaying Todd's smug face, I knew she didn't get how personal this was. This wasn't just a slight. It was a pattern of disrespect that had been building for decades, and it finally boiled over. Todd, of course, was a disaster. He called me nonstop for days, each time more desperate and more furious. He demanded I clear his name, that I tell Lucy the truth, that I fix everything I had ruined. But I didn't answer. I sent one vague text with a screenshot of the wedding bill, asking for reimbursement for half of it. I didn't say anything else. I couldn't. Not yet. Lucy, from what I heard through mutual friends, was devastated. She had been blindsided, humiliated, and she didn't trust Todd anymore. She threw his things out of her apartment, cut off contact, and refused to let him see their child. And honestly, part of me felt a twinge of guilt, but the overwhelming feeling was vindication. Todd had taken my wedding and made it about himself, and now he was feeling the consequences. I started thinking about the long-term fallout. Our parents were caught in the middle, confused and angry. Todd's baby was now at the center of a storm, and I had to remind myself constantly that no matter how justified I felt, a child was now involved. I couldn't control that, and I had to live with the fact that my revenge had repercussions beyond just him. And yet, every time I pictured the moment Michelle's dad held her hand, smiling at her during that dance, and Todd stepped in to ruin it, I couldn't stop smiling. It felt like a strange balance had been restored. The golden child, the guy who always got everything, had finally been humbled, and I was the one who made it happen. Abby eventually tried to mediate between me and Todd, but the conversations quickly fell apart. Todd accused me of being cruel, manipulative, and vindictive. I tried to explain why I felt justified, why his actions at the wedding weren't just a harmless mistake, but nothing I said seemed to penetrate. He didn't want reasoning. He wanted to be right and to be seen as the victim. And in many ways, our parents reinforced that by insisting I had overreacted. Over time, it became clear that some relationships might never fully recover. I had burned a bridge with Todd in a way that wasn't easily repaired. And even though Michelle supported me, I started questioning what all this meant for our future family. Would we ever be able to have him at holidays or celebrations? Would our parents hold grudges against us forever? These were questions I couldn't answer yet, and it gnawed at me in quiet moments. But then I thought back to every event Todd had hijacked, every milestone he had overshadowed, every moment where Abby and I had felt invisible, dismissed, or sidelined. For decades, He had been allowed to behave this way without consequence. For once I had taken control, and the satisfaction lingered, even amid the chaos. Sometimes at night I wonder if I went too far. I think about Lucy, about the baby, about Todd's fury and my parents' disappointment. But then I remember the look on Todd's face when he realized what had happened. I remember the way the room went silent when Lucy threw the ring back at him. And I can't lie, it was worth it, in a way that's hard to explain. Family dynamics are complicated. Love, resentment, jealousy, and entitlement can all mix in ways that feel impossible to untangle. I know that my revenge was extreme, and I know that not everyone will agree with me, including Abby and my parents. But in that moment, at that wedding, I had reclaimed something that Todd had been stealing for years. My peace, my happiness, my moment. And that, at least for now, feels like a victory. Even with all the fallout, I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret drawing a line in the sand. But I do regret that it had to be so dramatic, that it had to hurt so many people in the process, and that rebuilding these relationships may never be possible. Some nights, I imagine Todd learning a lesson the hard way, realizing that life isn't just handed to you, that actions have consequences, and that the world doesn't always revolve around him. And maybe in time he'll see that. Maybe he won't. Either way, I've learned something too. Patience only lasts so long, and sometimes you have to take control of your own happiness. No matter how messy it gets, months passed and the chaos from the wedding slowly settled into an uneasy silence. But silence didn't mean peace. Our family gatherings became awkward exercises in tension, each encounter loaded with unspoken resentment. My parents didn't know where to place themselves. They still loved Todd and felt protective of him, yet even they had to acknowledge that what I did was dream. Abby, meanwhile, was openly critical, though more measured as time went on. She didn't condone my actions, but she also didn't fully defend Todd. Todd, predictably, didn't take the high road. He tried to rebuild his reputation with Lucy, but she was wary, and rightly so. He pleaded, apologized, demanded explanations, and tried to pin the blame on misunderstandings. I responded minimally, short, vague messages, letting him stew in the consequences of his own actions. Every time he texted, I had to resist the urge to reply in detail. Part of me wanted to remind him of every single milestone he had hijacked in the past, to make him truly understand the pattern, but I held back. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. Abby tried to mediate a few times. She reminded me that family ties are fragile, and that revenge might bring short-term satisfaction, but long-term isolation. And she wasn't wrong. Our parents were already distant with me. Holiday dinners were strained. Todd didn't attend a single one for months, and even casual conversations turned into subtle arguments. I began to realize that, by enforcing consequences for Todd's behavior, I had also altered my entire family dynamic. There was no going back to how things were. Michelle, thankfully, remained my rock. She understood why I did what I did, and she even admitted that she had been quietly frustrated at how Todd had stolen so many moments over the years. But even she acknowledged the cost. The drama had affected everyone, and there was no pretending it hadn't. Our friends, our extended family, even some co-workers who had been invited to the wedding all had opinions. I became known as the guy who orchestrated a public, elaborate prank at his own wedding. Some admired it, others thought I went too far, and some simply avoided asking, not wanting to take sides. Todd's attempts at redemption were amusing in a way. He sent long, dramatic messages, showing his sincere remorse and offering to make amends. I read them, occasionally shook my head, and then deleted them. He tried calling me, showing up at family events unexpectedly, and even sent small gifts with apologetic notes. But it wasn't about gifts or words. It was about understanding the weight of his actions. And honestly, months later, he still didn't fully get it. I've had a lot of time to reflect on everything. On one hand, I feel justified. For decades, Todd got away with overshadowing every important moment. And finally, someone, me, stood up and said, enough. On the other hand, I see the cost. Family ties have been strained to the breaking point. Abby is wary, my parents are cautious, and Todd, well, he's simmering somewhere between anger and grudging respect. The weird thing is, I don't feel like I hate him. I feel like I understand him better, finally. Todd isn't evil. He's learned that attention and manipulation get results, and he's leaned into that his entire life. But he's also vulnerable, impatient, and unprepared for consequences. And seeing him face them, watching the consequences unfold for the first time, it was strangely enlightening. I've also thought a lot about boundaries. For years, I let my parents and Todd dictate the flow of family events. I let resentment build silently, convincing myself that complaining or standing up was selfish. But when I finally acted, when I drew a hard line, I felt a clarity I had never experienced before. That clarity came at a cost, yes, but it also taught me a valuable lesson. Sometimes, standing up for yourself is the only way to reclaim your life, even if it shakes the foundations of everything around you. Now, months later, I see Todd in a different light. He's still selfish in some ways, still impulsive, but he's also learning slowly that the world doesn't revolve around him. Lucy and he are trying to navigate co-parenting, and I stay out of it mostly. My parents are still trying to reconcile their love for Todd with their awareness of his flaws. Abby and I are closer again, sharing stories and quietly laughing about Todd's antics. But there's a mutual acknowledgement that some things can't be undone. And me? I'm married, I have my life, and I feel more confident in setting boundaries than ever before. The wedding incident and the revenge that followed will forever be a defining moment, both terrifying and exhilarating. Taught me about patience, strategy, and the consequences of both action and inaction. Most of all, it taught me about myself, that I'm willing to take bold, even extreme measures to protect what's important to me. Family is messy. Life is messy. Sometimes the people closest to you hurt you. Sometimes they betray you. And sometimes you have to fight back in ways you never imagined. I don't know what the future holds for Todd, for Lucy, or for the rest of my family. But I know this: I will never let anyone overshadow my happiness or my family's milestones again. If there's one thing I hope you take away from my story, it's that standing up for yourself doesn't always look pretty, and it doesn't always feel comfortable. But it's necessary. And yes, sometimes it involves consequences that ripple farther than you expect. That's life. That's family. And sometimes, that's revenge. Over time, Todd's efforts to recover his reputation became almost predictable. He would post vague messages on social media, sometimes indirect apologies, sometimes trying to spin the story in his favor. He even attempted a few gestures toward Lucy, sending gifts or leaving notes at her door. I heard about them secondhand, of course, because I refused to engage. Watching him flail through these attempts was almost surreal. It was like seeing someone who had always assumed the world would bend to them suddenly realizing it wouldn't. And I couldn't deny there was a part of me that felt satisfied. I started thinking more about the consequences of my actions, the ripple effects I couldn't control. Lucy, understandably, was protective of her child, and I had to remind myself constantly that the baby was innocent in all this. I never interfered directly in their relationship, but I watched from a distance, knowing that my actions had forced Todd to face accountability he had never encountered before. And as much as it had been about revenge, it was also about teaching a lesson he desperately needed to learn. My parents gradually stopped avoiding me, but the tension lingered. They'd come around for holidays, family events, and dinners, but nothing was the same. Todd's absence was palpable. Conversations that once flowed easily were now punctuated with caution, almost like walking through a minefield. It was exhausting, and I knew that rebuilding trust, if it was even possible, would take years. Abby and I, however, began to rebuild our relationship. We laughed again, shared stories, and quietly bonded over our collective history with Todd. There was a shared understanding now, a solidarity born of surviving the chaos together. Looking back, I realized that the wedding incident was a turning point for everyone involved. Todd had always been the golden child, the one who never faced consequences, and now he had. It was brutal, yes, but it was transformative. He had to see that actions have repercussions, that life isn't just a series of moments where he can insert himself and steal the spotlight. And while I don't know if he fully internalized it, at least for the first time, he had to grapple with it. For me, the experience changed how I viewed family, boundaries, and even myself. I learned that letting resentment build silently only hurts you. I learned that standing up for what's important, your happiness, your milestones, your moments, is not selfish. And I learned that sometimes, extreme situations call for extreme measures. I don't glorify revenge, and I don't think it's the answer for everyone. But in my case, it was a statement. A line had been drawn, and I wasn't going to let anyone cross it again. I also learned the value of support. Michelle was unwavering. She understood the stakes, she supported my decisions, and she stood by me through the storm. That kind of partnership matters more than anything, because no matter how justified I felt, facing family backlash alone would have been unbearable. Having someone who truly understands your perspective, who trusts your judgment, and who shares your priorities is priceless. Todd's story isn't over, and neither is mine. We'll continue to navigate this complicated family dynamic. There will be awkward encounters, moments of tension, and probably more disagreements in the future. But I feel prepared now. I understand my own boundaries, my own limits, and my own willingness to protect what matters. I've learned that family can be complicated, messy, and even painful, but standing up for yourself is essential, even when it comes at a cost. So, as I wrap this up, I want to leave this with anyone listening or watching. Sometimes, life will test you in ways you never imagined. People will take advantage, steal your moments, or try to manipulate you. When that happens, you have to decide where you stand, how far you're willing to go, and what you're willing to accept. For me, that meant taking drastic action. For someone else, it might mean something completely different. The lesson is the same. Protect your happiness, set your boundaries, and don't be afraid to assert yourself. In the end, the chaos, the revenge, the fallout, they all became part of my story. And while it wasn't pretty, it was real. It was a moment of empowerment, a moment of clarity, and a moment that reminded me who I am and what I value. And as much as Todd will continue to learn, struggle, and grow from this, I will continue to live my life with the confidence that I can face anything, handle anything, and protect what's mine. Family is complicated. Life is messy. But sometimes, just sometimes, justice, however unconventional it may be, feels undeniably sweet. And that's exactly how I felt the day I finally saw Todd. Get a taste of the consequences he had always avoided. If you are still listening and find this story interesting, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notifications for more revengeful and dramatic stories from Reddit.